Hi, everyone, and welcome to this live edition. We're talking about the episode 46 of the Happier at Work podcast, and my guest, Karin Tischler. Now, Karin, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background, and then we can share what we spoke about on the podcast that came out this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me as a guest on the show, Eva. It was really a great pleasure. And for everybody who is watching, my name is Karin Tischler. I'm the founder of Emily's Path Consulting, and I'm focused on promoting flexible work. And I host the podcast Job Sharing and Beyond, where I interview global guests around the world about flexible work, fathers and care, and more to promote flexible work and to normalize it.
Yeah. And that's pretty much what we covered on the podcast. So the podcast came out this morning. Normally I do these LinkedIn Lives in advance. This is my first time to schedule a LinkedIn Live, and I didn't realize it was going to pop up as a post on LinkedIn as well, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe there'll be more people watching us live if it's scheduled as a post. But yeah, so the podcast, we're talking about issues around gender equality and specifically how flexible working, role models and that kind of thing can help with promoting gender equality, especially in light of this recent report that came out from McKinsey and Lean In. Which stated that 25% of women were thinking about taking a step back in their career or leaving altogether. So this is a report that was done recently, and it's all related to COVID and the pressures that women specifically are under because they take on much more of the caring duties at home. So do you want to kind of give people a taste of what to expect from the podcast?
Yes, absolutely. Basically, what we talked about is examples of, for example, flexible work. So one of them is job sharing and top sharing. And top sharing, for example, is if somebody shares a management position or an expert position. And while it has been written about for 40 years, it still has not been implemented very much at all across the world. There are certain countries in the world where it's more common, but overall, it hasn't been. And I truly believe it is such an excellent model because it allows continuity for a job, because it's ultimately a full-time job that is filled by two people. It allows the people doing it to continue on their career. And so that's one of the things I really like to see much more in the world. And
top down is certainly not anything I'd never heard of it before our discussion. So the entire concept to me was absolutely new. Can you talk to us a little bit more then about job sharing in general, and like what does that mean? What does that look like? What are the things to watch out for?
Right. So I would say typically when somebody hears job sharing, it kind of has maybe a little bit of the connotation, oh, it's a mommy track. It would be two young mothers who would prefer to have more of a flexible arrangement, which in reality, there is certainly a part of it. But other people would job share because they might, for example, have somebody who is planning to go into retirement, and somebody new is coming in and might be doing a side hustle. So this intergenerational job sharing is actually super because it allows transfer of knowledge of the person who has a lot of experience, and maybe the younger person has more technical skills. So they work together, and there are many different models. So it could be, for example, that somebody works Monday to Wednesday, and then the other person works Wednesday to Friday. On Wednesday, they overlap and communicate. And that's really one of the key things. Often people think, oh my goodness, I'm now having to manage two people. But it really couldn't be more away from the truth, because people who want to do job sharing or top sharing are extremely good communicators. They are super organized, and they really work together as a team and figure out who is doing what. And they always have a sparring partner. So actually there is less supervisory, work for the manager because they can figure out things among themselves. And so it is just an excellent model. And other reasons why people might do it is, for example, if somebody comes new to a country or a new culture within a country, within, a larger country, they might not know the language, but might have technical skills. So again, they could work with somebody together and they can learn from each other. And then other reasons I've heard is somebody is writing a book. And these are always people who might otherwise simply not be available for that particular organization or for, the economy as a whole. So it is really a huge opportunity to have potential, highly skilled, highly experienced people that could be working, for an organization. And when you look at like the war for talent, this is, if somebody as an organization really embraces this, that's a huge differentiating factor compared to another organization in the industry.
Definitely. Another thing that we spoke about, Karin, was this concept of role modeling. So I suppose in a couple of different guises or in a couple of different ways. So there's the role modeling that men can have within an organization, and men being allies for women to get into those more senior positions and to help with the caring duties at home on the one hand, and then on the other hand, having women in leadership positions act as role models for other women as well. So do you want to kind of touch on that a little bit as well?
Yes, and actually there has been a very recent model, event, like the co-CEO of Zalando in Germany actually stepped down and publicly explained the reason was that his wife's career was now taking priority, as well as him taking care of the second child is due, in a few weeks. And so there was this huge debate about, well, when you look at how many women that they down to prioritize their husband's work. And in my mind, while that is clearly true, we will not normalize care work for men if we don't have role models, especially on a senior level. So to me, this was an excellent example. And other examples are, for example, when somebody is coming back from maternity or paternity leave, instead of saying, let me tell you what you've all missed at work, the opposite should be the case. It would be, so can you tell me what type of skills have you learned while you were gone? And then another thing, and I would say COVID has certainly, sort of, I don't know what the English word is, drawn the sheet away from what real life is like. A few years ago when the BBC reporter had the little kids coming in and it was this big thing. Well, now on Zoom call, kids, dogs, whatever, right?
It's like, more authentic, I think.
Exactly.
People are seeing right into your room, whatever room that you're broadcasting from when you're on Zoom, or whatever room your video is pointed to when you're on a video call.
Exactly. But so once people are going back to the offices, I think the important thing, especially for male senior leaders, is to say, if they have to leave at 3 or 4, instead of somebody saying, oh, I have, some appointment, to point out and say, I am going to my daughter's baseball team event or a piano recital or whatever it might be, to really make a point and do the opposite of secret parenting. Somebody said parenting out aloud or something like this. But really, it is to normalize it, to, basically show that everybody can have care duties, because that's really, in my mind, in order to get to gender equality, we need to have more flexible work, and it needs to be across everybody, not just the mommy track. And then in order to do that, men need to take on more care work.
I think it humanizes work a little bit more. It makes work a little bit more human, doesn't it? When you talk about what's actually going on for you outside of work, like why for what reason is it that you're leaving early? Just coming back briefly to what you said about the Zalando, the co-CEO there, really interesting, because on the one hand, you could say that they've made a huge deal out of this, and they would never do that if it was a woman who stepped down to support her husband's career. So on the one hand, you can be like, they've blown it all out of proportion. But on the other hand, like you say, we really need to have those role models, and that's why it's important to publicize these kind of things when they happen, because it makes it a bit more normal. And it'll be great the day that it doesn't make the news, because then it has become normal in a way.
Right. And one other thing is also, and SAP, who I love to quote as best practice examples in the podcast, but recently there was a post by Karin Tischler, the head of HR at SAP Germany. And so he was talking about the fact that they basically are guaranteeing young fathers to work only 80% of the time and get 100% of the pay, I believe, for the first 6 weeks. And one of the points really there is, again, if one day when somebody, let's say in their 30s, is hired, whether male or female, one can no longer tell who is going to work flexible, who is taking leave because of, for whatever caregiving reason or whatever, then it really will make it more gender equal and reduce the unconscious bias. Exactly. Yeah. So I thought that was an excellent example.
Yeah. Brilliant. And another really great example. I love hearing those. And you love SAP. You love to quote SAP. I know that.
I do.
Brilliant. So for everyone watching, whether you're watching live, whether you're watching on the replay, the podcast is available now wherever you get your podcasts. You can search for Happier at Work, and you should find it. If you don't find it, then let me know, because there's something going on, but it should be anywhere you search for your podcasts. And today's episode that came out today was episode number 46 with my guest, Karin Tischler. Thank you so much for tuning in today, whether it's live or the replay, and pop your comments below. Let me know what you think of the podcast as well. I will be talking about it on social media, and I'll be putting links. So I'd love for you to get involved in the conversation. This is probably going to be my last LinkedIn Live before we go into the holiday season. I do have a few more days left of work, unfortunately, but I will be taking some time off, lots of time for rest and recuperation over the Christmas period. And I just wanted to say thank you to anyone who has supported me over the year. It's been a journey. It's been a journey. But thank you for the likes, the comments, the private messages, just all the support, and anything that I can do for you, please feel free to reach out. And thank you again to Karin, who was my guest for the podcast today, and for your time on LinkedIn Live as well, Karin. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me as a guest. It was really a pleasure, and it was really nice talking with you like this now. And I'm wishing everybody happy holidays as well.